that very day. Today's gospel reading is the famous Road to Emmaus reading. It's all about Christ accompanying the early church on their journey, as he does with us today. And there's so much to this story, particularly how it culminates in the breaking of the bread. And it is no coincidence that that is where the two disciples recognize Jesus. It points us to finding Jesus in the Eucharist. But for our little reflection today, I want to highlight the context of the passage, because that makes the Eucharistic message all the more clear. The first line we read tells us that this happened that first Easter Sunday. The story begins with the disciples, Cleopas and someone else, walking away from Jerusalem, where all the apostles are and essentially where the whole church is. And the tone we get as they unknowingly encounter Jesus is one of dejection. Why the context is interesting is that they tell their companion, who they don't yet know is Jesus, the story. We find out that they have heard the good news of the resurrection already. In other words, their dejection is not simply their processing of the suffering and death of Christ, but their struggle to understand the good news of his resurrection. Now, the good news can be troubling to our minds, and we can struggle sometimes to understand it, because it causes us to think outside of our ordinary ways and within the ways of God. But even as their hearts burn while Jesus speaks to them, their real understanding happens in the breaking of the bread. That means the place they come to recognize that Christ is risen is in the Eucharist. They've heard the good news, but it only becomes real for them when it is lived, as we would say, sacramentally. Oftentimes we think of the Eucharist and other sacraments as these things that hide God. In point of fact, they actually function the other way around. They manifest and reveal God. They give us a tangible experience of something we cannot otherwise see. So let us then always remember that the Eucharist is where we can encounter the living Christ.